Hello. Oh, there we are. All right. It's working. How's everybody doing? All right. I know it's been 8 hours and you guys are trying to keep it awake. I get it. But thank you for being here for the last speaking part of the day. Thank you so much. If you don't know already, Dope is Yola, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Hall of Flowers 2024 for having us out. And today is a special day. We're going to interview a legendary grower, activist, publicist. And here we go, guys. Let's get straight into it. This is Ed Rosenthal. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you. How do you like this event so far?
I think this is great. It's just really a celebration and a great day. Was great weather, which facilitated it, and it's just a wonderful carnival.
A wonderful carnival is a great way to put it.
Yeah, yeah.
Adult carnival.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see a
Yeah.
Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're going to be talking about a lot of things today, and something you want to get into. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to start off by saying thank you for helping generations of people learn how to grow at home.
Oh,
First off, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Your book, Cannabis Hand Growers Handbook, has sold 2 million copies.
Yeah.
So each one of those books is passed down. So it's like 4 million people you've helped out, at least.
Well, I think it set a certain style for people growing and people understanding the plant. And of course, it's advanced over the years, and subsequent books covered that in more detail. So,
Cool.
yeah, so I think that it's had an influence.
I would say yes. And one thing I wanted to ask this is a different kind of question, I think, for you doing publication, doing your own. I mean, you worked for High Times for how long? How long you columnist for?
About 16 years.
16 years. Obviously the internet can get your word out to millions of people in a click. But have you seen that this has changed the way people report on cannabis news, on cannabis legislation, because the internet's so accessible? Or do you think it's added to it in terms of you being a journalist?
Well, High Times was started before there was an internet, so it wasn't as easy to communicate, to transfer information, to learn what's going on in other states or just around you. But with the internet, there's more access. So a lot of these specialized publications, such as High Times for Cannabis, provided a link to for isolated people to get information about what's going on elsewhere and in the world, and to realize that they were not alone. That was one of the main things, is that if you were isolated in a community that wasn't using it, and you felt that you were all alone, in having High Times, you knew that you weren't the only one. So it served that purpose too.
I think that was the intro for all of us to seeing that it's more than just smoke a joint in the backyard and try not to get in trouble. Well, there's a world to it. There's horticulture. There's business to it. And now, as you can see, there's thousands of people coming together.
Well,
to do this.
It was people in history classes, people don't learn much about the last 60 years or so. But there was this Vietnam War going on, and there was and the cops were beginning to arrest people for cannabis, and there were a lot of protests. So there was this group called the Yippies, and the Yippies, the first generation of Yippies, had called for the Celebration of Life Festival in Chicago at the same time as the Democratic Convention. And what happened there, which was on live TV, was not a riot of the protesters, but a police riot where they went berserk, and anybody who wasn't a cop was subject to being hit with a baton, roughed up, arrested, and that included delegates to the convention who were just trying to get to the convention, reporters, uh, protesters, and actually it's depicted in a movie called The Trial of the Chicago Seven. And anyway, so that was the Yippies. And then after 68, we the Yippies looked, the people who were in the inner circle of this group, they looked around, and most of them, what do you know? They were all dealers, or they were all involved with cannabis. And we realized that cannabis was a very, very big issue. And the Yippies turned their sights to cannabis. And several Yippies, myself included, Tom Farsad, a few other people, started High Times Magazine as the Yippie Project. And that's how it got started. And if you want to learn about American history, you should, or a segment of it, you should actually make an effort to see this movie, The Trial of the Chicago Seven, which is very realistic.
I actually never heard of that.
And when I was arrested a little more than 20 years ago, my trial followed that same route. It was a prejudiced judge, and I had been told I'm not going to go into my case too much, but I had been told by the city that I was free from prosecution because I had been made an officer of the city.
Of Oakland, correct?
Right, and totally legal. Okay, so then the feds come in and they arrest me and they say, well, the city had no right to tell you that it was legal and we're doing you on federal charges. And so the jury wasn't allowed to know that I was growing clones so that people could grow, medical patients could grow their own. And I was delivering them to dispensaries who knew who was a patient.
Yeah.
So I thought I was totally legal until the feds informed me that I wasn't, and I was put on trial, and the jury was not allowed to hear that I was what I was doing, right? Or that I was an officer of the city or anything. They weren't allowed to hear it. The city attorney wanted to testify, they wouldn't let him. So anyway, the jury finds me guilty. And then they go home and they read all the information that they weren't allowed to hear. And they came back 4 days later, as most of them, as civilians now, because they had done their duty as jurors and denounced their verdict. First time in American history.
And that's 1999?
So that's what?
1999, correct?
It was 2002,
Oh, 2002.
2000 through 2007. And that was the first time that had happened in American history. And it was covered by newspapers all over the world, but especially in the United States. And one of the main things that it did was it made it normalized medical marijuana because the New York Times took quotations off. So anyway, that is how High Times started. That was part of the project. I mean, all of this was.
So you took one for the team, got it public.
Well,
not willingly, but it happened, and then you got national publication.
Well, they picked the wrong person, you know.
Well, speaking of this, there's something you brought up before we went on stage, something you want to talk about, and it's kind of. So what you have in your rights were taken away from you and you were put on trial for something you shouldn't have been when you were basically given immunity by the city. Not immunity, but you're an officer of the city of Oakland to go for medical patients.
No, I was told that I was given
Yeah.
immunity. That's
It's
as
insane.
long as I didn't violate anything.
But federal government said, well, you don't have the right, Oakland, and
Right.
we're arresting you.
Yeah.
So you spent 1 day in jail, correct?
Yeah, 36 hours. They owe me 12. I was sentenced to 1 day time served.
1 day times, where'd you have to serve, in Oakland?
Well, I had already served it. I had been in jail.
Oh. Okay.
So I did, and then I didn't actually do time, and I don't want to go into the whole thing of it, but anyway, I think it would have been very inconvenient for the government to give me time for that. It would have been because when they arrested me and all that, they thought that the city of San Francisco was generally opposed to all this. They didn't realize how progressive San Francisco
That's the first place I
was.
ever went to get medical weed was San Francisco.
Yeah,
The Green Door.
right.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh, sorry. So on to the question that you wanted to bring up, and it's pertaining to this. It's basically, you said, what are the pros and cons, and what's detrimental in the policies of the presidential candidates in terms of marijuana? So you're saying, what are the policies, and what's going to be the outcome if each person's elected, and what are their policies? I am 100% don't know what's going on, so you're going to have to take this away completely. I
Okay.
have no idea.
Well, first of all, let me let you know that I am totally biased. So
You're totally biased already?
Yes, I'm totally biased.
You know what? At least you can say it. That's
you know,
okay.
I have
That's
an
okay.
opinion about it.
That's all right.
And you know, throughout most of the recent opposition to cannabis, it's been among the Republican Party. And it's been at a local level, it's been at a state level, and it's at a federal level. And it's the Republican Party, when different bills come up in Congress, the Republicans vote as a block to block any kind of marijuana legislation. Now, I'm just talking from the vantage point of cannabis. I'm not talking about women's rights, minority rights, or anything like that. I'm just talking about this one particular segment. And there are other issues, and all of those issues are important as well. But even if Trump wanted to make cannabis legal, he would not be able to get it through a Republican Congress. They are so opposed to it. Even he would have to step back on that. And he is opposed to it.
So what does that mean for the average person coming here,
Well,
as far as the legislation not being able to be progressed?
we would like the federal government to do something in terms of normalizing marijuana, so that on a daily basis, more people use marijuana than alcohol now.
Yes.
So this is something that's quite normal in America, right?
Yes.
It's totally
2024.
normal. And the fact that it is not legal on a federal basis, it inhibits these dispensaries. And what I mean by inhibits them, there's all they're subject to special punitive damages just for being a dispensary. They have all kinds of banking problems, and
I can say that, yes.
and just normalizing it so that when you go into a federal park, you're not violating the law and subject to getting busted.
Yes.
Right. So that there can be interstate commerce, so that the United States can export cannabis to other countries. So for all these reasons, most of these things would be opposed by Republican politicians, and we can see in states where the initiatives won and there were Republican led governments in that it was very difficult to get the the new laws enforced. So,
I have a question.
so that's the Republican. As far as the Democrats go,
There.
okay.
Thank you.
So Harris was opposed to marijuana legalization. She suggested that people vote against the initiatives. But
Okay.
when but she was city district attorney of San Francisco, and when the initiative passed, she kept the spirit of the initiative, which was legalization, and so it wasn't as if she was fighting legalization or anything. You know, San Francisco has bigger battles to fight, such as fentanyl and other things, and so nobody was concerned about cannabis. So she's been around cannabis. She knows that it isn't harmful. The people around her, who are her advisors, some of them use cannabis. I'm not saying I know any specific person that does, but considering the kind of politics they have, they're likely to have used it or be using it. So I would say that we're going to have if Harris wins, we will have a better situation as far as cannabis goes. And other people could talk about other situations that are similar in terms of women's rights, taxation, just all of that. So many different things. His attitude towards allies and things. But I'm just concentrating on this, and just based on this, if this is part of your vote or part of how you figure your vote, don't count on any breaks from a Republican president or a Republican legislature.
I have a question for you. What happened in the last 4 years? If we've been, didn't the Democrats win? You treat me like I'm an alien. I just showed up. I have no idea.
Well,
But if they had it last 4 years, what happened to the?
well,
like,
in the
what
last
happened?
4 years, they didn't have a democratically controlled House. So, right?
I got you.
And there's this filibuster rule where the minority rules because you need 60% to get a bill passed in the Senate. So there are 100 senators, and it's not like 49-51. It's like 60.
Oh, so they still control that, even though the presidency is
Even though they're the minority.
I
So
had
it's
no
very
idea.
difficult. But I think that this will change with a Democratic president.
All right. Well, I mean, I have
That's-
no idea,
yeah.
but so you enlightened me a little bit. What are the pros if the Democrats win? What are the? You say we have a better chance, but what is that chance of getting legalized?
Well, first of all, a 280E, which affects so many marijuana businesses, where they can't take the same deductions that other businesses would
Yes.
take. That's one thing, and then it would make it so that there could be interstate commerce. Right now, if you're growing in Kansas, you can't sell to Illinois.
Yeah, or
right.
between countries, like we could have
Right.
American
Right.
brand in France or
Exactly.
Germany for sure.
In Canada, export. Most of the Canadian weed is exported.
Oh, because they don't have this.
Uh,
They don't have this law holding them
That's
back.
right. So,
Huh.
so this is holding back this big
I gotta
industry.
be honest. When you said I'm biased, I was like, "What the hell is about to happen?" And that actually enlightened the shit out of me. I had no idea that any of that. I got to be honest.
Yeah. So just think. I mean, if this happened, we'd have a much more thriving cannabis industry.
All right, that helps. Yeah, because there's no you can't do regular deductions as a cannabis business. It's set up right now. My opinion. You tell me if it's different. You're setting up in a losing situation if you're a cannabis business right now. You can't write off your labor. You can't write off your expenses, and it's almost like I made $1 million to spend $600, and I owe taxes in $400. I'm in debt.
So if you're growing in California, you can't ship it across the border to Nevada
No.
because of the federal law.
Yeah.
So, and you can't ship it out of the country. So that's a real harm to American industry. So if I think that the Democrats understand this, and the Democrats understand that marijuana isn't harmful, and I hope that during the next 4 years we'll be able to change these laws. I mean, we're getting very close.
I thought it was 2020 was going to happen. It's about 4
Well,
years late.
You know what? I thought before the turn of that it would happen before the turn of the century, and perhaps if Gore had won, there might have been a change. Gore and his wife used to go to Grateful Dead concerts, so I know that they were familiar
They
with
partake
it.
at least.
Yeah. But I think it might have happened, but it's been 50 years.
Yeah.
It's 50 years. Can you imagine? Many smokers have been were born.
Three generations, damn near. Mexicans.
Most of the people who were using, since '68, they never saw it totally legal.
And now look at
and
this.
it
This is
still
close.
isn't totally legal.
This is close.
Yeah, it's
I
close.
mean, we are at a carnival.
But
There's a guy in a motorcycle in his cage.
Some of the icons like Jack Herer and Dennis Perone, people like that, they never got to see what it's become.
But they laid steps and they laid foundations for people, and maybe the next one of them is here. You
Right.
never know.
Well, Dennis was very brave. He opened up the first dispensary when there was no other help for AIDS patients. There were no medicines. And he's the guy who did it. Who started this? He did.
Yeah, Prop 215 was him, correct?
Yeah.
I got
He
to
started.
smoke a joint with that man once. Yeah. So, bringing it up, you say Grateful Dead and Al Gore. I feel like you have been in this scene not even the scene, you've been in this culture for so long. Do you have any stories of that anybody might, maybe some icons of ours, any stories of hanging out with certain people? Because I know you mentioned Grateful Dead, and I'm not trying to say anything, but you've been around for a while, and you have been hanging out for a long time.
Well,
I've been smoking it up since before a lot of us were born.
The Grateful Dead ruined my life as far as pop culture. What?
Why?
Well, you get into them, and the other bands come and go and everything, and they're still there, and so I realized that there's a whole American songbook that I'm not familiar with. Maybe distantly, but
okay. You're stuck in the year of that album came out.
Well, no, it's like they're still playing.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Yeah. So
I mean, they have a whole collab over there.
Anyway, living in San Francisco, they played there a lot, and so it was very easy to go. So, for instance, if they played 4 or 5 concerts in a series, if you had tickets for the 5 concerts, you wouldn't hear the same songs twice.
Oh.
So it's not that they were playing this. You go to other bands. They have a set, and they take it from
I think a little bit of psychedelics has something to do with that too.
But they knew that a lot of people would be attending more than one in a series.
Yeah, and then you get boring.
Yeah,
watching the same episode over and over. How many concerts do you think you've been to over the time? Did you follow them? Did you go on the tours with them?
I didn't have to because they were playing in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I might go to Sacramento or something, but not really. No, they'll be back.
So being in San Francisco so long, you must have seen. I mean, you must have seen a lot of culture come through this place. A lot of. Weed transcends everything. It's across. if you're a rapper, you smoke weed. If you're a musician, an artist, a person working at Jamba Juice,
Yeah, well,
most people smoke weed now.
well, it's the Bay Area. There was this governor who said, Edmund Brown. He said, God picked up the left side of the United States, and anything that was loose rolled into California. And
It's a good one.
he meant the coast of California, and that whole coastal area has a lot of innovation in it. So, of all kinds, and it ripples up and down the coast. So, and
Question: Hippie Hill seems to be like the haven for the average stoner now in California. Every 420. Did you see this birth of that? Did you see the start of that? How did it start? Because being a San Francisco native, you must know a lot more than most of us here.
Well, I was on the other side. I was in Berkeley and Oakland more.
Oh, see, that's
But
the other side of the water.
Yeah, and there are so many events that are happening at that time, a lot of parties and things. So that's only one part of the celebration in the Bay Area.
Gotcha.
It's a holiday there.
I have a question. Since you started, I know joints. There's probably pipes, bongs. Probably not so many blunts. Have you seen the dab culture? Do you like it? Do you think it's overconsumption? Do you think it's abuse? I abuse the shit out of weed. So how do you feel about it?
Well, I think cannabis users know when they've had enough,
Yeah, that's true.
right? I mean, that might be the difference in the way cannabis users and alcohol users perceive things. Like the alcohol user thinks that they're okay, that their perceptions and their ability to react to a situation, they feel that that they're okay, and the cannabis user will say, "Oh, I don't think I should drive now."
Oh yeah, I think it's the stigma of like, if I get pulled over, it's over. I smell like weed. I think everybody's so afraid of that. Even in legal states, I think if you still,
but that might not be, because it might be an infusion or something like that.
Oh, I just meant the paranoia part.
But
that's all.
but I'm talking about there's a point at which a cannabis user will say, "I am not fit to drive," to themselves.
I've been there twice. So
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
it's happened.
Yeah,
I totally understand it.
Or I don't think I should go on the freeway right now. Something like that. Like. But they know it.
Once.
You see, that's the other thing.
Liquid courage is a completely different thing.
Yeah. So that's and you have these big festivals. You see all the cops around here because of the alcohol.
A couple of them are
and all the
smoke.
people fight, all the fights and all that. And that's that would be normal if it is
Just,
normal in.
Everywhere else in life that's alcohol.
So,
Totally understand that.
So
in the terms of, it's 2024, you've been doing this for a very long time. If you could talk to your 21-year-old self and say one thing, what would it be? In the terms of this cannabis culture. Still not
well,
legal?
my 21. Well, look, once you use it, and whether you like it or not, you realize that it isn't dangerous, right? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
So if it isn't dangerous, why harass people? See,
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not on that side.
I mean, but I'm talking about just rationally. Why harass people?
There's no rational explanation.
I think that, as long as the perception that only non-whites and freaks used it, that it was okay for cops to just, destroy people's lives for a few joints. But
Non-whites and freaks. That's a pretty good category. I get you.
yeah, right.
I understand what you're saying.
So, as soon as non-freaks white started using it, they had to reassess it, and
So you think it's
I think that it was a period of
discrimination foundation to this?
totally, totally, you know,
Well, I think maybe now it might have changed because I think everyone gets discriminated on just because you're a pothead, you smoke weed, you're a crackhead when you take dabs. I think the perception.
I don't
is-
think so. I don't
No?
think so in California. No, I don't know. I mean, not maybe somewhere inland, but on the coast here, I don't think. No,
Okay.
no, I don't think there's that kind of. Everybody does it, and for instance, if you listen to late night, like Colbert or something, he's always talking about how the smell of marijuana hides the urine odor.
Oh, San
in the
Francisco?
street. No, of
Yeah.
New York City. So,
I would say,
I mean, I think it's. I think it's much more accepted. I mean, it certainly wins every time there's a vote, an initiative. I mean,
Yeah.
the politicians
Ammunition.
the politicians didn't make this legal. People voted it legal. So every time there's a vote, it wins.
So where do you see the legalization happening? If say everything goes and the right people win that you say will help, do you think it's going to pass in the next coming years?
I think they will change the laws, yeah, because they want to be able to tax it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of cities in California opposed it, and then they saw their neighbors
revenue?
reaping the revenue, and they changed their attitude. And I think that once the tax revenue starts flowing, and employment and everything that goes with that, cities take a different look at it.
So say it passes. What does that mean for us? What does it look like? Because right now, it's not. I mean, I have hella weed on me. I'm not really worried about it.
Well, the price should go down on a retail level.
Ah, that's awesome.
That's
All right.
number one, because all those taxes that are on it. I mean,
Federal and state.
I'm talking about the federal dispensary, that the clubs can't deduct all those 280 expenses.
Gotcha. That's a
Taking
business killing.
that part out
Business killing.
will make things a lot more reasonable.
And I think that's drove companies to cut corners, and that's why we're seeing a dip in quality, I think, overall in the mass-produced, massive brands. And like the LA Times covered a few things, I think that's what's going on, because if you're seeing something you built for 15 years and it's going down the drain because your taxes are so high, 9 times out of 10 people are going to go, what can I do to save this? So I think just that 280 tax alone is what, 30% of
and
your money
also
back.
like brands, you could have a brand, but it can't cross state lines. So it has to be made in each state.
Each hub in each state.
So
More money.
So you can't have standardization or national brands or things like that. So I think that all that could be taken care of. Those are some of the things, and export, which I think is very, very important.
Of course, tax these
And,
foreign countries.
Look,
Unpacks.
California produces some of the finest cannabis in the world.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different methods people have, but so it would be great if we could ship it out.
Awesome. Before we start wrapping up, I know you've probably been asked this a million times, but not in the sense of a brand, not in the sense of monetary gain. What can a somebody out there, a grower, what's one thing you can tell them that's going to help them on this journey of learning this horticulture and learning the inner workings of a plant? Because my little brother, I watched him, become it's a passion of his. I watched it overnight, just reading books, reading handbooks, reading guides. What's one thing you could say? It doesn't have to be, well, you should try this soil. What's one thing, I guess, in the terms of keeping people motivated, or something that you've learned along the way, because you have more knowledge than most people?
Well, I'd say don't take on something that's bigger than what you can do. And it's easier to sow than to harvest. It's easier to get those plants into the ground, but it's the harvest that counts, and that takes more effort. So plan ahead so that you know that you're really capable of completing the project that you'd like to do. And use other people's mistakes. That is, nice. Use books and use the internet. Gain as much knowledge as you can rather than learning it on your own.
Okay. And besides your book, I know it's being a little more biased, but actually, you might say it. What is something that somebody can take away? What's one piece of literature that growers out there that can go home tonight and study? I know you can get online and get alerts from everywhere.
Yeah. I think my books are. I think my books are pretty complete. Some people like Cervantes' book, but but all the other book, I had a book, Marijuana Growers Handbook, which was very good, but it was getting old. It was 15 years old. Cervantes' book was old. So I put out a book about 3 years ago, which has brought it up to date, so that even if you're an experienced grower, you're going to get a lot of information on it, on the plant and on growing it, that people just didn't have 15 years ago. Yeah. So I would recommend that book, because it really brings.
What's the name of the book? The new one?
It's called Cannabis Growers Handbook.
And that, you said that's the one you dropped 3 years ago?
Yeah. Yes. It has a silver cover with a marijuana leaf on it.
Nice.
And some people use it in conjunction with the old book, Marijuana Growers
New Testament.
Handbook. Yeah. So they both have information, and I think that they're very complete. And you mentioned, it doesn't go in. Those books take it in a way from the plant's vantage point, what the plant needs, and the way that it's delivered changes, but the plant's needs don't change.
Yeah. Same
so
things
it takes it that way. So.
Okay. Where can everybody find more information from you?
Just put my name into Google and go from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to say that one day. That's cool.
Yeah.
So Ed Rosenthal on Google, and they can see everything else that's possible. Growers Handbook.
They'll see. I have an Instagram site, a newsletter, and Facebook. So you can get in touch with me pretty easily.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for talking. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. It's Hall of Flowers. This is Ed Rosenthal.